has there been a Buckingham Palace cover-up?
Well, I mean, we do know the facts that the emails were sent, but I can't imagine Buckingham Palace, from my understanding, would have had anybody trawling through 30,000 emails. I just, unless they were the one, they've been picked out, the ones that highlight the issues. But the fact that they were given them, the fact that they were supposed to highlight wrongdoing, and the fact that that wasn't brought to the public's attention, is bad news for the palace. But I think a cover-up suggests that they did it on purpose. I would have thought that the reality is here, had many of these emails even been read, I don't suppose they've got the staff to sit there and go through 30,000 emails.
It is a lot of emails. That's a good point. It says that these emails showed or alleged that Andrew was sharing confidential government information, which is, to be fair, what I believe he's been arrested for now. And they were passed to the Lord Chamberlain in 2020. Elsa, you worked for Buckingham Palace for many years before 2020, which we'll point out. But presumably, if the Lord Chamberlain was given knew that these emails exist, would the late Queen, would Prince Charles, would Andrew Mountbatten Windsor have been told that these emails exist?
Well, the Lord Chamberlain is very much sort of an honorary role. He has a staff of one, and it was during COVID. So 30,000 emails coming to him. I mean, he doesn't even have an email account, so I don't quite know how that would have worked. But what I would say is the palace have consistently said they will fully cooperate with the ongoing police investigation. And I'm sure, they will be true to their word in saying that. But I have to say, I agree with Rob there. It sounds more like it doesn't sound like a conspiracy or palace cover-up. It sounds much more like an error, I think.
An error, Rob. I mean, the King acted last year once he realised that Andrew had lied. But could they have? Could the palace? Could the late Queen have done more back in the day?
It's possible, but there wasn't a police investigation ongoing at the time, and we were getting all sorts of conflicting stories about it. My biggest issue is not so much the 30,000 emails. Really, that should probably have been passed on to the police, but that would have meant the palace would start the investigation into Prince Andrew. And it would have surely been on the onus has to come from the investigating body, i.e. the police, to ask for this information. But, there's an argument to say it should have been passed down the line and it should have been, more people should have been aware of it. The bigger issue for me is that the palace paid something in the region of £12 million to Virginia Giuffre, a woman that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor said he'd never met. And I think that doesn't stack up. And to me, I've always thought that just smacks of being hush money.
I mean, we're still trying to find out the actual ins and outs of who paid when, and
exactly.
We still actually don't know how much, really, because it's all confidential.
And there's been a fudge about it as well, over whether or not the King paid money, where I know the Sun wrote that he did pay money. So, you've got a lot of issues that will come out, but the most important thing to remember at this moment in time is that, as it stands, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is an innocent man. He's not been proven guilty of anything. There's an ongoing investigation. He's not been charged or anything. And all of this is evidence that will be amassed, sifted through by a number of detectives, and a decision will be made by the force of the CPS as whether they're going to pursue this in a court of law. And then you've got a long way to go before it goes to court, and you've got a long way to go before there's a trial and a verdict. So I think we've got a lot of miles to go yet until we know exactly what was been said, and the onus is on proof and evidence. And at the moment, we have information that Andrew lied, obviously, to the BBC, to Emily Maitlis, but that's not a crime. The fact is, they've got to prove that Andrew's done wrongdoing, and it's got to be then judged in a court of law. And as it stands, I've got no faith. I've got no interest in Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, none at all. But I do believe in the rule of law, and I do believe that it has to be evidence-based.
And he has consistently said he is innocent of these accusations. And I would say also what we knew in 2010 when this story first broke and the photographs of Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein in Central Park were first published, what we know now, we didn't know then, and
Well, also, look, we've got other topics. I mean, it's a really busy week this week, but you worked at Buckingham Palace at 2010.
I did.
I mean,
yeah.
did the late Queen, did Charles, did not the Lord Chamberlain at the time, or yourself, did you not know the weight of allegations against Andrew that certainly
Not
came
then
out?
at all. And of course, when these newspaper stories were published and the accusations were made, the then Duke of York was asked about them and he denied them, as he still does to date. And you can only act on the information you're given.
There's also issues, I think, that are worth addressing. I do know that, I'm told that the King, when he was Prince of Wales, and Andrew had at least one long conversation about these allegations, which Andrew denied them directly to the King when he was Prince of Wales. And the point of all this is that if that's the case, you now have an issue going forward with a potential case against Andrew, where the King of this country could be called under a subpoena to give evidence in his own court, which he can't do under the law because the case is brought in the name of the Crown. So the very fact that there has been interaction between somebody who could be charged and the King of the country means that a case in this country, if you were Andrew's lawyer, you could argue that he can't get a fair trial because you can't call witnesses. And if a key witness is the King, the current King, a case cannot be brought against Andrew because he can't bring that evidence. And we saw that in the case with the Paul Burrell case, which was dropped because of the fact that the Queen recalled a conversation with Burrell and the case collapsed because the Queen could not be called as to give evidence in her own court. So there's a long way to go with this. And I think everyone should tread fairly carefully when talking about cover-ups and other things and charges, because as it stands, it has to be evidence-based and it has to go past the Crown Prosecution Service to even bring it to trial. And we're a long way from that.
There's been, you were talking about there about what was said in the past, that the palace do kind of say to us off the record, or sources say off the record, that Andrew was saying exactly what he said in public. He was saying that privately. So say some sort of his stories on Newsnight has turned out to be false. He did keep in touch with Epstein, so he was therefore telling the rest of the family and therefore the staff that
he lied. We know he lied. But you cannot convict someone and send them to prison for lying to the BBC. Okay. There's half the people in the Parliament will probably be in prison. So the fact of it is, we live in a society where you're innocent until proven guilty. I have nothing but contempt actually for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But everyone in this country deserves a fair trial, and you are innocent until proven guilty. And the evidence is what it's all about. Irrefutable evidence. And as it stands, we don't know what the evidence is because it's not been put before us in a court of law.
There has been criticism in recent weeks, or else I'll bring you in, there has been criticism in recent weeks that the late Queen was maybe too soft on Andrew, or that Andrew was a blind spot, and now it's Charles that has stood up and done what he needed to do by kicking him out and getting rid of his titles. You worked with them for many years. Did the late Queen have a blind spot for Andrew? Is that that's why we're in the mess now?
Matt, I don't think she did. I never saw her treat any of her children differently. I mean, they all work in silos. They might all work in Buckingham Palace, but they each have an individual private office. They have their own engagements. They have their own set of charities, patronages. So it's fairly dysfunctional, may I say. So I certainly didn't see the late Queen having Andrew as her favourite. And as I said earlier, what we knew in 2010 was not what we know today. We know far much more about what went on, especially after the notorious BBC Newsnight interview, than we did then.
There's some figures have come out this week about Andrew's time working as a UK trade envoy. He accumulated more than $2 million in taxpayer-funded expenses. His annual costs jumped by 15% in a single year. Was Andrew, was he good at his job as a trade envoy?
I think in certain countries and in certain circumstances, he was. He could open doors as a British member of the royal family, especially in countries in the Middle East, for example, where politicians simply couldn't do it. So I think in that aspect, yes, he was good at his job. I don't know what you think, Rob.
Well, I mean, we get in various different reports from the civil servants that had to work alongside him. I think we're confusing sometimes his behaviour and his character with the job that he did. I think the job that he did was fairly satisfactory. Prior to him doing it, it was the Duke of Kent who was actually, went on a couple of trips with him, and he used to do a very good job as well. And in similar ways, opening doors and representing the country. But I think that there's the problem is now is that Andrew is seen as a pariah. The fact that he's lied and he's associated with Epstein tarnishes everything that he's done before. And I think, in all honesty, that's probably unfair. This was a guy that was a hero pilot in the Falklands War, and he did, other good works along the way. But the reality is this relationship with this convicted paedophile, his lack of judgment, which is appalling, and his lack of honesty means that we judge him rightly in a very bad way. We look at him now as somebody that, frankly, the royal family don't want anything to do with. They want him as far away from them as possible.
But the problem is, Rob, people knew about these allegations about Andrew a long time ago, and
he
was
did,
representing
but he denied,
the government.
The point of it is, he denied them to not only to his brother and his mother and every member of the royal household, and therefore, unless then somebody comes forward, as they have just done now, like the Thames Valley Police, and investigate it, and then look to arrest him to get information. They haven't charged him, but they've arrested him under caution. What was the late Queen, Charles, and those civil servants working and courtiers working alongside him supposed to do? What were they supposed to sort of shop him, say this guy we think is a wrong one? It's not going. It wasn't going to happen in that order. It had to happen in the order it's happened now. The big argument is, why has it taken so long for charges for this investigation to get off the ground? I mean, it seems preposterous it's taken so long. If you look at the relationship that he was having with Epstein and walking through the park and photographs being taken, when we know this guy was a convicted paedophile, and his explanation was frankly a lie. He said he just went there to break off the relationship. He was there for days, staying at the hospitality at Epstein and having a special dinner in his honour. So we all know that both he and Sarah continued the relationship. And that is a serious problem for their reputations. But is it evidence of a crime? We have to wait and see. We have no evidence of a crime.
But people knew what he was like in this era. People knew his behaviour, not talking criminal behaviour, but they knew that he was rude to Andrew. They knew that he was rude to people. They knew his behaviour. They knew his demands and stuff like that when he was UK trade envoy. And I was just surprised that we're only saying now that it was a silly appointment and he shouldn't have had that job.
I think that he wasn't the only. The king, the current king, was against it. Thought it was a poor decision. He knew it and knew his brother probably better than most. Yeah, you could probably criticise, and people are now criticising the late Queen to say, that she wanted it to go through. Well, to be fair to her, she probably wanted her son, who was leaving the Royal Navy, to have a constructive role and a purposeful job to do. And somebody who had been in that seniority in the royal family, had travelled the world representing her, she probably thought would be somebody that could do a good job.